Good evening, friends. Today, once again, myself, AJ Lucky, in front of you with some real facts and informative knowledge about some hidden power inside a human body. So, without wasting a single moment of your precious and valuable time, let's start up with the topic. Today, we're going to cover some real facts about spirituality, spiritual awakening, enlightenment, ego, and psychic awakening. What is spirituality? Are there actual signs or symptoms of a spiritual awakening? Of all the topics we cover here, spiritual awakening is perhaps the most misunderstood. Let's resolve that confusion now and ensure that we are on the path to authentic spiritual awakening. One of the reasons there's so much misunderstanding around the topic of a spiritual awakening is that we often fail to define relevant terms. In A Sociable God, for example, Ken Wilber provided 9 valid definitions of spirit and spirituality. We often link spirituality to the context of religion, but in my opinion, this is problematic. For now, let's define the spiritual as a quality of being beyond the physical or material domain of existence. Enlightenment too, on the other hand, can mean many different things, but it's most often associated with experiences. You can have an enlightened mind through disciplined study of higher spiritual principles and theories, but this enlightenment doesn't mean that you are spiritually awake or you are psychologically aware. So the question still remains, what is a spiritual awakening? So we can say it's an awakening of a dimension of reality beyond the confines of the ego. The ego is an exclusive sense of self or I. This awakening occurs when, for whatever reasons, the ego somehow lets go so that a higher level or spirit can arise within. Let's take an average individual, an average human being. The average individual is more archetype than human. That is, the ego is mostly a collection of archetypes programs or set patterns of behaviors. People call this series of program the acquired mind a set of mundane conditions which we collect since birth, which we are in fact collecting since birth. Spiritual awakening implies the return of what the Taoists call the original spirit, or what Jung called the self, and it's this return of spirit that makes us truly human. So, what's the basic difference between spiritual awakening and psychic awakening? Well, this would be another confusion in between the terms spiritual awakening and psychic awakening. Psychic awakening relates to the activation of pineal gland. With it, you open up to the other dimension of reality beyond this limited three-dimensional realm of space and time. Spiritual awakening, on the other hand, involves opening the heart center. It's an opening of heart center. It's a process more closely associated with one psychology, the emotional body and the soul. Now, what is ego? Why we are continuously talking about ego, and ego? So, the ego, or what the Taoists call the lower soul, believes it's in charge. This ego is a sense of self or I. When you say things like, I'm this, I have a father, I'm rich, I think blah, 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 that's an ego. It's a possessiveness because it experiences itself as separate from everything else. This lower soul, this ego, this possessiveness is driven by base pleasures, negative emotions, and trying to meet Maslow's basic human needs. The appetite for the lower soul is insatiable, and if left unchecked, it goes on for eons. So when Maslow said man is perpetually wanting animal, he was referring to his ego. Thankfully, there is also a spirit, higher self or higher soul. And this divine spark, I repeat, this divine spark, this higher soul, this higher spirit considered as a divine spark because it's not driven by these basic needs. Instead of that, this spirit is calm, neutral, compassionate, understanding and intuitive. While the ego, on the other hand, accumulates knowledge through learning. The spirit intuits reality by virtue of what it is. The ego thinks, the spirit knows. You got my point? Ego always thinks, spirit always knows. While the ego is always doing, the spirit remains eternally in a state of being. So, what happens during spiritual awakening? We tend to identify exclusively with the ego. As the process of a spiritual awakening unfolds, the ego begins to sublimate to the spirit. In the language of Taoism, the lower soul gets refined into the higher soul. And arriving at this spirit or psychic wholeness was a goal of Jung individuation process. But despite popular belief, that doesn't generally happen in a single moment. This is a moment of awakening. while can have a peak experiences that often up us to self-transcend reality, these experiences tend to be fleeting. Instead of that, the developmental literature explains there are stages of psycho-spiritual growth, and these permanent stages tend to develop over time. And this is a part of the reason many people are confused about a spiritual awakening. Walking in nature or a cyclic substance, they may have a beautiful experiences of oneness, for example, but these experiences are momentary. The individual's structure of consciousness has not changed yet. So, one more thing, the more important thing I'm going to tell you, there are some signs of a spiritual awakening. But before that, I'm going to tell you some false signs of a spiritual awakening. So before authentic symptoms of spiritual awakening, let's review some common signs, false signs. Okay, that's not authentic. Mark my words. These are false signs of a spiritual awakening. Thinking you are good and others are evil. This would be the trap one. You will consider yourself a good person and others are a bad and evil person. Identifying yourself as a spiritual person. You keep on believing that you are a spiritual person. That's the second trap. Seeking love and light. That's the third trap. And acting nice. That would be the most important and fourth trap involved in this type of false symptoms of spiritual awakening. And the last but not least, secretly believing that you are better than others. So on these all topics, on these all false and authentic symptoms of spiritual awakening, we're going to discuss in my next video, because I don't want to prolong this video for so long, it would make you bored. So very soon, in a couple of days, I'm going to publish another video which involves the false and authentic signs of spiritual awakening. So in this video, I think this will be enough, and thanks for watching my video. Thanks for being with me. And before leaving this video, let me thank to Mrs. Kiran Singh, the famous tarot reader, who gave me proper guidance and proper notes on these topics. And my special thanks to Carol Matthews also. She's a famous astrologist. And thank you once again for all you guys. God bless you, and keep watching my videos and keep liking my videos. May God bless you once again. Goodbye.